All right, so now our code for adding items has a basic skeleton to it. So we're preventing the default behavior from that submit event, and we know we're now in the function and are able to work in there. So we had kind of addressed earlier what our next steps are, but since we're now preventing the default behavior of this submit event and our input isn't getting sent anywhere, we want to intercept it. We want to get that input value and use it to create a new list item. So how are we going to do that? Let's hop into our index.html and understand exactly where the input field is. Back to our form and our input field here. This is where the actual text is being put in by the user. So this is the element that we want to target in order to retrieve that text. We have our ID here, which there's no class or anything. So our ID of the input element in this case is going to be our selector. So since we know that, let's go ahead and copy and paste this over now and set this as our next selector. And it's an ID in this case, so let's go ahead and use the ID notation. And there we are. So now we're targeting the correct element, but how do we actually get that text out of it? Well, let's go back to the jQuery documentation on forms. Since forms are so commonly used and supported by jQuery, there is an actual method that's going to serve us in getting the value out of this input field. And to no surprise, it's actually called val. What val is going to do is get the value of any form field. And there are many types of form fields. We are using a text field, but there are also drop downs and radio buttons. And what this val is going to do is pull out the value. So this is great. And returning back to our code, let's go ahead and actually get the value of the input. Well, let's spell value correctly. There we go. And just one last time, this would be a great point to do our console.log, just to see that we're returning the correct value before we move forward. So going back into our application, let's go ahead and open our DevTools. And in the console, when we log our next to-do item and add it to our list, it should be logged to our console. So there we are. We have the actual value of the input field that we wanted to target. So now we've got to figure out what are we going to do next. So returning back to our code, we can go ahead and remove our console.log for now. And our next step is going to be actually taking this input value and creating a new list item out of it. So that's our next step. But what we want to do now with this value is actually save a reference to it so we can access it to put it into our new list item we're going to create. But the easiest way to save our reference here is by actually saving this value as a variable. And variables are a staple part of JavaScript as well as a lot of programming languages. And to write a variable in JavaScript, you need to use the var keyword. And we can just name this variable item for now. So now we've saved reference to our input value. We have it saved as item, and then when an item gets added, we can add this variable to a new HTML list item. Are you with me? Variables are something that are very important in JavaScript. This var keyword is also very important. You could write a variable without using the var keyword, and now this would be considered a global variable. So a global variable can be accessed anywhere in your code, whereas when we use the var keyword, we are saying that this is exclusive to this function here. So in our smaller scale application, this probably wouldn't be as detrimental, but when you're in a larger scale application and you're using global variables, they can easily be overwritten or manipulated by other code that you're not aware of. So it's always safer to use the var keyword and keep the variable scoped to the local function that it belongs to. All right, so now we have reference to our item. Let's figure out how to create a new list item.